Picture this. You're sitting in the palm court at the plaza, nursing a lukewarm Earl Grey, thinking your biggest problem is the rent due on Tuesday. Suddenly, an older woman in a vintage Chanel suit slides into the empty chair opposite you. Her hands are trembling, but her eyes are steel. She leans in, smelling of expensive jasmine perfume and gun oil, and whispers 6 words that destroy your normal life forever. Pretend you're my son's fiancé. Before you can blink, the heavy double doors burst open. The devil walks in. He's 6'3", wearing a bespoke suit, and he's looking right at you. Welcome to the day Serafina Calloway died, and the future Mrs. Dante Moretti was born. Buckle up. Serafina Calloway preferred the invisible corners of the world. As a junior archivist for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she spent her days breathing in dust and decaying paper, documenting the lives of people long dead. She was comfortable with the past. It couldn't hurt you. It was the present she had trouble with. On a rainy Tuesday in November, she was treating herself. It was her 26th birthday, a fact her ex-boyfriend had forgotten, and her landlord had ignored while sliding an eviction notice under her door. So she had put on her only good dress, a thrifted navy wrap dress that fit surprisingly well, and taken herself to the Plaza Hotel for tea. She sat at a small round table near the back, sketching the ornate stained glass ceiling on a napkin. She was invisible here. Just another tourist or a lonely woman, waiting for a friend who wouldn't show. "Don't look up," a voice hissed. "And for the love of God, smile." The chair opposite her scraped against the marble floor. Serafina froze, her charcoal pencil hovering over the napkin. A woman had seated herself across the table. She was striking silver hair, pulled back in a severe chignon. Diamonds, the size of robin's eggs at her ears, and a tweed suit that cost more than Serafina's entire student loan debt. But Serafina noticed the details others would miss. The woman's knuckles were white as she gripped her alligator skin clutch. A bead of sweat was tracing a path down her temple, dangerously close to her impeccably applied foundation. "I'm sorry," Serafina stammered, looking around for a waiter. "I think you have the wrong—" "Pick up your teacup," the woman commanded, her voice a low, terrifying purr. "Laugh, like I just told you a delightful secret." Serafina blinked. "Who are you?" "My name is Isabella, and right now I am the only thing standing between you and a bullet." Isabella's eyes darted to the entrance of the Palm Court. "There is a man in a grey suit standing by the maitre d' station. He has a scar running through his left eyebrow. Do not look directly at him. He is waiting for me to be alone." Serafina's heart hammered against her ribs. She instinctively wanted to turn, but Isabella reached out and gripped her wrist. Her skin was ice cold. "If he sees I am alone, he signals the 2 men outside. They take me. I disappear. If he sees I am with family." He hesitates. He needs confirmation. "Family," Serafina whispered. "I don't know you." "You are Serafina," Isabella said, her eyes boring into hers. "You are an art historian. You met my son in Florence 3 years ago. You are meeting us here to discuss the engagement party." "Engagement?" Serafina choked on air. "Here he comes," Isabella breathed. The tension in her shoulders was sharp enough to cut glass. "My son, Dante." The atmosphere in the room shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure drop. The chatter at the nearby tables died down. Serafina turned her head slightly. Walking toward them was a man who looked like he had been carved out of a storm. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's fluid grace. He wore a black suit that fit so perfectly it felt like an insult to everyone else in the room. His hair was dark, swept back, and his face was a map of hard angles and harsh beauty. But it was his eyes that terrified her. They were dark, intelligent, and completely devoid of warmth. He stopped at the table. He looked at his mother, then at Serafina. He didn't blink. He didn't look confused. He looked lethal. "Mother," he said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth as velvet, rough as gravel. "Dante, darling." Isabella said, her voice trembling slightly before she forced a bright, fake tone. "Look who finally made it. Serafina was just telling me about the venue for the wedding." Serafina stopped breathing. This was insane. This was a scene from a movie, not her life. She waited for the man Dante to call the police, to laugh, to tell his mother she was senile. Instead, Dante Moretti turned his gaze fully on Serafina. He scanned her face, her neck, the pulse jumping in her throat, her cheap dress, the charcoal stains on her fingertips. He smiled. It was a terrifying, shark-like smile. He leaned down, bringing his face inches from hers. She could smell him sandalwood rain and something metallic. He took her hand, the one with the charcoal stains, and kissed her knuckles. "Serafina," he said softly. "I told you the traffic would be murder. I'm sorry I'm late, amor." He pulled out the chair next to her and sat down, draping an arm over the back of her chair, effectively boxing her in. He looked up, his eyes locking on something or someone across the room. "Is the coffee fresh?" Dante asked casually, though his body was coiled tight as a spring. "Yes." Isabella exhaled, her shoulders dropping an inch. "The grey blend is particularly bitter today, but I believe it is leaving." Serafina risked a glance toward the entrance. The man in the grey suit was speaking into a phone, backing away out the door. "He's gone," Dante said. The warmth instantly vanished from his voice. He dropped his arm from Serafina's chair and looked at her with cold calculation. "Who are you? And how much did she pay you?" "Dante, be nice," Isabella snapped, regaining her composure. "She's a civilian. I improvised." "Improvised?" Dante's voice rose. "You dragged a civilian into a Greco family hit. Are you insane, mother?" "I was compromised," Isabella hissed. "My security detail was gone. Dead for all I know. I needed a shield. She was sitting here. She has the look." "I'm sitting right here," Serafina said, her voice shaking, but louder than she intended. She stood up, her legs wobbling. "I don't know who you people are, but I'm leaving. I won't say anything. I just want to go home." She grabbed her purse and turned to flee. "Sit down," Dante said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. "No," Serafina said, taking a step away. Dante was on his feet in a blur of motion. He didn't grab her roughly. He simply stepped in front of her, blocking her path like a wall of granite. "Miss," he said, "do you think the man in the grey suit didn't take your picture? Do you think he didn't run facial recognition on you the second he saw you sitting with Isabella Moretti?" "I don't care," Serafina said, though tears were pricking her eyes. "I'm nobody." "To Stefano Greco, you are now the fiancé of the capo of the Moretti crime family," Dante said calmly. "If you walk out those doors alone, you will be snatched off the street before you reach the subway. They will torture you to get to me. And when they realize you know nothing, they will kill you just to send a message." Serafina stared at him. The sounds of the tea room clinking china soft piano music seemed to fade into a buzzing white noise. "What do I do?" she whispered. Dante buttoned his jacket. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was electric, burning her skin. "You come with me," he said. "You play the part. Until I kill the man who wants you dead, you belong to me." The ride from the plaza was a blur of tinted windows and terrified silence. Serafina sat in the back of a black SUV that looked more like a tank than a car. Dante sat next to her, tapping furiously on a phone, ignoring her existence. Isabella sat opposite them, sipping water from a crystal bottle she had produced from her purse. "You have a nice profile," Isabella noted, studying Serafina. "Aquiline nose, very Roman. It sells the lie." "My father was from Turin," Serafina muttered, hugging her purse to her chest. "He was a mechanic in Queens." "Was?" Dante asked, not looking up from his phone. "He died 3 years ago. Heart attack. And your mother? Gone since I was 6. Dante finally looked up. "No siblings?" "No." "Good," Dante said coldly. "Fewer loose ends to protect." "Rocco." "How far out are we?" "5 minutes, boss," the driver grunted. They pulled up, not to a house, but to a private underground entrance of a sleek, ultra-modern skyscraper in Tribeca. The Moretti Tower, though it probably had a different name on the deed. They took a private elevator that ascended so fast, Serafina's ears popped. When the doors opened, they stepped into a penthouse that was breathtakingly cold. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls looked out over the weeping city. The furniture was white leather and chrome. There were no photos, no clutter. It was a museum, not a home. "Rocco will show you to the guest wing," Dante said, shrugging off his jacket. He revealed a gun holster strapped to his chest. Serafina flinched. "Wait," Serafina said. She stood in the middle of the vast living room, feeling small and ridiculous in her thrift store dress. "We need to talk. You can't just keep me here." Dante stopped pouring himself a drink at the wet bar. He turned slowly. "I can do whatever I want, Serafina. I own this city. Right now, the only reason you are breathing is because I am allowing it." "Dante," Isabella scolded. "She saved my life." "She was a prop," Dante shot back. He walked toward Serafina, the glass of amber liquid swirling in his hand. "Let's get one thing clear. This isn't a romance novel. You aren't a guest. You are a liability that I have to manage." "I have a job," Serafina argued, finding a spine she didn't know she had. "I have a cat. I have bills to pay." "Your rent was paid 6 months in advance, 10 minutes ago," Dante said indifferently. "Your cat Barnaby is being collected by one of my men. He will be brought here. As for your job at the Met, you're taking a sabbatical. Medical emergency." Serafina's mouth fell open. "How do you know my cat's name?" "I know everything about you, Serafina Calloway," Dante said, stepping closer. "I know you graduated from NYU with honors, but didn't pursue your PhD because you couldn't afford it. I know you spend your Friday nights restoring a 17th century fresco in the basement of St. Patrick's for free because you love the smell of linseed oil. I know you're lonely." The accuracy of his words stung more than the threat of violence. He had dissected her life in the span of a 20-minute car ride. "You're a monster," she whispered. "I am a king," Dante corrected. "And kings do what is necessary." He took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving hers. "Here are the rules. You do not leave this penthouse without me. You do not use your phone. You do not speak to anyone unless I clear it. In exchange, you get to live. You get the finest food, the finest clothes, and the protection of the Moretti family. For how long? Until Stefano Greco is handled. Could be a week, could be a month. And if I refuse? Dante set the glass down. He moved so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. He leaned down his lips, brushing her ear. "Then I open the door," he whispered, "and I let the wolves in." He pulled back his face, a mask of stone. "Dinner is at 8. Wear something that doesn't smell like mothballs." He turned and walked toward his office, the heavy oak doors slamming shut behind him. Serafina stood trembling in the middle of the room. Isabella sighed, walking over to pat her arm. "He's actually very sweet once you get to know him," Isabella said. "He's just stressed. The Greco family has been encroaching on our shipping lines in New Jersey. War makes men jagged." "I want to go home," Serafina said, her voice cracking. "You are home, Cara," Isabella said, her grip tightening slightly on Serafina's arm. "You are the fiancée of Dante Moretti now. You need to start acting like it, because tomorrow night is the fireman's gala. And everyone will be there, including the man who wants to kill us." Isabella smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come, let's get you cleaned up. We have a lot of work to do. You have to convince the world you're in love with a monster. And honey, you're a terrible liar." Serafina looked at the locked elevator doors, then at the sprawling view of New York City, a city that suddenly felt like a school. She realized then that Dante was right. The Serafina who drank tea and sketched ceilings was dead. She had to become someone else. Someone who could survive in a tank full of sharks. She looked at Isabella. "If I'm going to do this," Serafina said, her voice hardening, "I'm not wearing white." Isabella's smile widened, genuine this time. "Oh, I think I'm going to like you, Serafina." The guest wing of the penthouse was larger than Serafina's entire apartment building. It was stocked with silk pajamas, French skincare products, and a bookshelf filled with first editions. Dante had clearly done his research on her preferences, which was both flattering and terrifying. The next morning, the penthouse was a hive of activity. A team of stylists, seamstresses, and jewelers had invaded the living room. Isabella sat on a white leather sofa like a queen, holding court, pointing a manicured finger at racks of designer gowns. Too frilly, too desperate, too virgin sacrifice, Isabella critiqued, waving away a white tulle confection. She needs to look like she could stab a man with a fork and finish her risotto without blinking. "Bring me the red one." Serafina stood on a pedestal in the center of the room, feeling like a doll. "I don't usually wear red," she murmured. "You do now," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. Dante walked in. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, the jacket unbuttoned, looking rested and irritatingly handsome. The stylists parted like the Red Sea. He walked up to the pedestal and looked up at Serafina. His gaze was clinical, assessing the merchandise, but there was a flicker of something else, heat, that made Serafina's toes curl. "It fits," Dante said. The dress was a deep crimson silk that draped over her body like liquid fire. It was backless, plunging dangerously low, with a slit that went up to her thigh. "It's a bit exposed," Serafina said, crossing her arms. "That's the point," Dante said, stepping onto the pedestal. He towered over her. "We need everyone looking at you. If they're looking at you, they aren't looking at my security detail positioning themselves around the perimeter." "So I'm bait," Serafina said flatly. "You're a distraction," Dante corrected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black velvet box. The room went silent. Even the seamstresses stopped pinning. Dante opened the box. Inside sat a ring that made Serafina gasp. It was a flawless emerald-cut diamond, easily 5 carats, flanked by 2 blood-red rubies set in heavy platinum. It looked ancient. It looked heavy. "This," Isabella said softly from the couch, her voice reverent, "is the cuor di ferro, the iron heart. It has been on the finger of every Moretti bride since 1920. And now it's on yours," Dante said. He took Serafina's left hand. His grip was firm. "I can't wear that," Serafina whispered. "I'll lose it. I'll get mugged." "You are under my protection," Dante said, sliding the heavy ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "And this ring is a signal. It tells the other 5 families that you are off limits. Touching you would be an act of war." He didn't let go of her hand. He pulled her slightly closer, invading her personal space. "Now the backstory," he said, his voice dropping to a low murmur only she could hear. "Listen carefully, Serafina. We met 3 years ago in Florence. You were studying the restoration of the Vasari corridor. I was there acquiring art for a private client." "I was in Florence 3 years ago," Serafina said, surprised. "I was an intern at the Uffizi." "I know," Dante said. "I saw you there." Serafina froze. "You saw me?" "You were wearing a yellow sundress. You were arguing with a tour guide about the historical accuracy of a Medici portrait. You were fierce. I remembered it." Serafina stared at him. The idea that this dangerous crime lord had noticed her, the invisible girl, years ago, sent a shiver down her spine. "We reconnected 6 months ago in New York." Dante continued, his eyes searching hers. "We fell in love fast. It was intense, passionate. You ground me. I spoil you. That is the narrative." "And why haven't we announced it until now?" Serafina asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Because I didn't want to expose you to this life until I had to," Dante said. "Which is the truth." He leaned in his lips, brushing her cheek. To the room, it looked like a tender moment between lovers. "Tonight," he whispered, "Stefano Greco will be there. He is the man who ordered the hit on my mother. He will try to talk to you. He will try to scare you. If you falter, if you show fear, he will know you are a fake, and he will kill us both." He pulled back and looked at her. "Can you do this, Serafina?" Serafina looked at the ring on her finger, the cold, heavy weight of it. She looked at Dante, a man who dealt in death but had saved her life. She thought about her boring life, her empty apartment, the dust of the archives. She lifted her chin. "Does he know anything about art?" Dante smirked. It was the first genuine smile she had seen on him. "Stefano? He thinks Monet is a brand of champagne." "Then I'll be fine," Serafina said. "I can handle uneducated bullies. I work in academia." The firemen's gala was held at the Cipriani on 42nd Street. It was the kind of event where the champagne cost more than a car, and the air smelled of old money and secrets. When the black limousine pulled up to the red carpet, the flashbulbs were blinding. It was a wall of white light. "Stay close to me," Dante said. He checked his cufflinks, then reached for the door handle. "Don't look at the cameras. Look at me. Always look at me." The door opened, and the noise hit them a roar of shouting photographers. Dante stepped out first, buttoning his tuxedo jacket. He turned and offered his hand to Serafina. When she stepped out, a hush fell over the paparazzi for a split second before the shutters went into overdrive. The red dress was a weapon. The diamond on her hand fractured the light into 1,000 rainbows. Moretti. Who is she? Give us a name. Dante ignored them. He placed a hand on the small of Serafina's back, his palm burning through the silk, and guided her up the stairs. Inside the ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and gowns. A string quartet was playing Vivaldi. As they descended the grand staircase, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room like a wave. "That's him," someone whispered. "Who is the girl? Look at the ring. Good God, is that the Iron Heart?" Serafina felt her knees shaking, but Dante's hand on her waist was a solid anchor. He pulled her close, his body shielding her from the curious stares. "Breathe," he murmured in her ear. "You're doing great. Just smile and look like you know something they don't." They moved through the crowd. Dante introduced her to judges, senators, and real estate tycoons. Serafina played her part. She was charming, demure, but intelligent. She spoke Italian to a visiting diplomat, earning an impressed squeeze on her hip from Dante. Then the air in the room changed. It wasn't a noise, it was a scent. A heavy, cloying smell of expensive cologne and cigar smoke. A man separated himself from a group near the bar. He was in his 50s, with silver hair, a tan that was too orange, and a smile that showed too many teeth. He walked toward them with open arms. "Dante," the man boomed. "My boy." "It has been too long." Dante went rigid. "Stefano," he said. His voice was polite, but Serafina could feel the muscle in his arm turn to steel. This was him, Stefano Greco, the man who wanted them dead. "And who is this vision?" Stefano asked, turning his reptilian eyes on Serafina. He took her hand before she could pull away and kissed it, his lips wet and lingering too long. "I didn't know you had a companion." "Fiancé," Dante said sharply. "This is Serafina Calloway. Serafina, this is Stefano Greco, an associate." "Fiancé." Stefano's eyebrows shot up. He didn't let go of her hand. He squeezed it hard enough to grind the ring into her finger. My. You move fast, Dante. I heard you were unattached just last week." "When you know, you know," Dante said, his eyes narrowing. "Let go of her hand, Stefano." Stefano chuckled, releasing her. "Of course. No offense intended. It's just, she seems so delicate. This world of ours, Miss Calloway, it eats delicate things for breakfast." He looked Serafina up and down, his gaze stripping her naked. "What does a lovely girl like you do, model actress?" "I'm an archivist at the Met," Serafina said, her voice clear and steady. She surprised herself. "An archivist," Stefano laughed. "Dust and old papers. How quaint." "It teaches you to spot fakes," Serafina said, locking eyes with him. "You spend enough time looking at the real thing, true mastery, true power, and the cheap imitations become very obvious. They try too hard. They're too loud, too colorful." She tilted her head, looking at Stefano's flashy gold watch and orange tan. "They lack provenance." Silence stretched between the three of them. Dante went perfectly still. Stefano's smile vanished. His eyes went flat and dead. "Provenance," Stefano repeated softly. "Is that so?" "It is," Serafina said, smiling sweetly. "Dante has excellent provenance. That's why I chose him." Dante let out a short, sharp laugh. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her flush against him. "She has a sharp eye, Stefano. Be careful. She might archive you." Stefano stared at Serafina for a long moment. "Very charming," he spat, Enjoy the party, Dante. Watch your back. Accidents happen on the dance floor. He turned and disappeared into the crowd. Serafina let out a breath she had been holding for 2 minutes. Her legs felt like jelly. You, Dante whispered, turning her to face him, are incredible. His eyes were blazing. It wasn't just approval. It was admiration. I hate him, Serafina said, her hands trembling. He looked at me like I was a piece of meat. He won't look at you again, Dante promised. Come, let's dance. I don't want to dance, she said. I want to leave. We can't leave yet. We have to seal the deal. We have to show them we are untouchable. He dragged her onto the dance floor. The orchestra began a waltz. Dante put one hand on her waist, the other holding her hand. He moved with surprising grace. They spun in circles, the red dress flaring out around them. Did you mean it? Dante asked quietly as they turned. Mean what? That you chose me because of my provenance. Serafina looked up at him. The lights of the chandelier reflected in his dark eyes. For a moment, she forgot the hit men, the lies, the danger. She just saw a man who was holding her like she was the most precious thing in the room. I didn't choose you, Dante, she whispered. You kidnapped me. Details, he murmured, his lips curving into a smirk. Suddenly the music stopped. A loud pop it echoed through the hall. Then another. Screams erupted. The chandelier above them shattered raining crystal shards down onto the dancers. Get done, Dante roared. He tackled Serafina, throwing his body over hers as the ballroom descended into chaos. Gunfire erupted from the balcony. Stay down, Dante shouted, pulling his gun from his holster. Rocco, secure the exit. Serafina lay on the polished floor, covered by Dante's heavy frame. She could smell the gunpowder now mixed with his sandalwood scent. She looked at his face. He wasn't afraid. He was in his element. He looked down at her, his eyes checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? He demanded. No, she gasped. Good. He kissed her forehead hard. Stay here. Do not move. He rolled off her and began to return fire toward the balcony, a demon in a tuxedo protecting his treasure. Serafina watched him, her heart hammering against the cold floor. The fake engagement was over. The war had just begun. The escape from Cipriani was a blur of violence and screeching tires. Dante had dragged Serafina through the kitchen, shooting a lock off a service door, and shoved her into the back of a waiting unmarked sedan. He didn't get in the back with her. He threw himself into the driver's seat. His tuxedo jacket, torn blood seeping through the white shirt at his shoulder. Get down, he commanded, slamming the car into gear. He drove like a madman, weaving through the gridlocked Manhattan traffic, mounting sidewalks, and scraping paint against delivery trucks. Serafina huddled in the back seat, clutching her knees. Her ears were ringing from the gunshots. Her red dress was ruined, stained with grease and... Was that blood? You're bleeding, she said, her voice trembling as she climbed into the gap between the front seats. Dante, your shoulder. It's a graze. He gritted out his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Check the glove box. There's a burner phone. Call the number labeled Nonna. Isabella. Just call it. Serafina fumbled with the cheap flip phone. It rang once. Report. Isabella's voice came through sharp and cold. We're compromised, Dante said, leaning toward the phone Serafina held. The detail at the gala was bought. Rocco is dead. I'm heading to the Bronx safe house. The Foundry. "I will meet you there with the doctor," Isabella said. "Dante, is she alive?" Dante looked at Serafina in the rearview mirror. His eyes were dark pools of pain and fury. "She's fine. Clear the perimeter." He hung up and tossed the phone onto the dashboard. They drove in silence for another 20 minutes until they reached an abandoned industrial park in the South Bronx. Dante pulled the car into a derelict warehouse, the metal gate rattling shut behind them automatically. As soon as the engine cut, Dante slumped forward, his forehead resting on the steering wheel. "Dante!" Serafina scrambled out of the back and opened his door. He groaned, falling out of the car and into her arms. He was heavy dead weight. "I'm okay," he lied, his face pale and slick with sweat. "Just dizzy." "You're losing too much blood," she said. Panic was clawing at her throat, but the archivist in her, the part that organized chaos into order, took over. "Lean on me." She practically dragged him toward the freight elevator. The safe house was a converted loft on the top floor. It wasn't luxurious like the penthouse. It was raw brick exposed pipes and dust. She got him onto a leather sofa. He hissed in pain as she peeled the ruined tuxedo jacket off him. The shirt was stuck to the wound. "Don't pull it," he rasped. "You have to soak it first." "I know," she snapped, rushing to the kitchenette. She found a bottle of vodka and a clean towel. For the next hour, Serafina wasn't a fake fiancée. She was a nurse, a soldier, a savior. She cleaned the wound, a nasty furrow across his deltoid, where the bullet had torn through muscle but missed the bone. She poured vodka over it, while he bit down on a leather belt to keep from screaming. She stitched him up with a sewing kit she found in a drawer, her hands steady, despite the horror of it. When it was done, Dante lay back against the cushions, shirtless, his chest heaving. A bandage was taped securely over his shoulder. Serafina sat on the floor beside the couch, exhausted. She still wore the blood-red gown now ripped at the hem, her hair a wild tangle. "You have good hands," Dante whispered. His eyes were half closed, glazed with pain and exhaustion. "I restore paper from the 14th century," she said, quietly, wiping her bloody hands on a rag. "You have to be gentle with things that are falling apart." Dante turned his head to look at her. "Is that what I am falling apart?" "You're full of holes, Dante," she said. "And I don't just mean the bullet wound." He let out a dry chuckle that turned into a cough. He reached out with his good arm and took her hand. His grip was weak but possessive. "You should have run," he said. "When the shooting started, you should have run out the side door." "And go where?" she asked. "Stefano knows my face now. I'm in this Dante, whether I like it or not." "I'm sorry," he said. The admission hung in the cold air of the loft. "I thought I could control the board. I didn't see the night coming. Who betrayed us?" "Rocco was loyal," Dante muttered. "He died covering our exit. It had to be someone higher up, someone who knew the security rotation, someone who knew we would be at the Cipriani." He pulled on her hand, urging her closer. "Come here. Dante, you need to rest." "I'm cold," he said simply. "Shock." Serafina hesitated, then climbed onto the sofa beside him. There was nowhere else to go. She lay down, careful not to touch his bad shoulder. Dante immediately wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her back against his chest. He buried his face in her neck. He was burning up, but his skin felt cold. She could feel the steady, powerful thrum of his heart against her back. "Tell me something real," Dante whispered into her hair. "No lies, no cover stories. Tell me something about Serafina." She stared at the shadows, stretching across the brick wall. "I hate Earl Grey tea," she admitted softly. "I was drinking it at the plaza because it was the cheapest thing on the menu." Dante laughed, the vibration rumbling through her chest. "I hate opera," he confessed. "I only go because my mother insists it makes us look civilized. I prefer jazz. The messier the better." "I'm scared, Dante," she whispered. "I know," he said. His lips brushed the sensitive skin behind her ear. "But I have you, and as long as I'm breathing, no one touches you." The dynamic shifted. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was intimacy born of survival. Serafina turned in his arms, careful of his wound, until she was facing him. His eyes were dark, dilated, searching hers. "You didn't just pick me because I was there," she said, a realization forming. "At the plaza. You knew who I was." Dante was silent for a long moment. He reached up and touched her cheek. "I told you. I saw you in Florence. That was 3 years ago. You wouldn't remember a random student unless I never stopped watching," he finished. "I didn't stalk you, Serafina, but I kept tabs. You were bright. In a world that is very dark, you were bright. When my mother called and said she was in trouble and that you were sitting across from her, I knew it was fate, or a curse." He leaned in. "I tried to keep you out of this. But now that you're here—" He didn't finish the sentence. He kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss on the knuckles or the cheek. This was desperate. It tasted of vodka and blood and fear. Serafina kissed him back, her hands tangling in his dark hair. For a moment, the Mafia, the hitmen, and the danger didn't exist. There was just this loft, this man, and the terrifying realization that she was falling in love with the devil. Serafina woke up to the sound of a gun slide racking. She bolted upright on the sofa. The morning sun was streaming through the grimy windows of the warehouse loft. Dante was standing by the window, fully dressed in a fresh black t-shirt and jeans, checking a semi-automatic pistol. He looked better. The color had returned to his face, though he moved his left arm stiffly. "We have to move," he said, not looking at her. The tenderness of the night before was gone, replaced by the cold, hard armor of the Don. "Isabella is here," he added. The elevator clattered open, and Isabella stepped out, flanked by 2 men Serafina didn't recognize. They looked like mountains with legs. Isabella looked impeccable, as always, though her eyes were rimmed with red. "Dante." She nodded. Then she looked at Serafina. "You're alive. Good. The dress is a tragedy, though." "Who betrayed us?" Serafina asked, standing up and smoothing down the ruined silk. "We're working on it," Dante said. "I'm going to meet with the commission. If Greco attacked a neutral ground like the gala, he violated the truce of 1998. The other families won't stand for it. They'll authorize a retaliatory strike." "You're leaving?" Serafina asked, panic flaring. "You're staying here with Mother and the guards," Dante said. "It's the safest place. No one knows about the foundry except family." He walked over to her. He didn't kiss her. He gripped her shoulder, his eyes intense. "Keep your head down. I'll be back by sundown, with Greco's head on a platter." He turned and left with his guards. The elevator doors slammed shut. The silence that followed was oppressive. Isabella walked over to a heavy steel filing cabinet in the corner of the loft. "He thinks he can solve this with bullets," Isabella sighed. "Men always do." "How else do you solve it?" Serafina asked. "With information," Isabella said. "This isn't just a turf war, Serafina." Stefano Greco has been obsessed with the Moretti family for 30 years. It's personal. But I never understood why. Isabella unlocked the cabinet. It was stuffed with papers, yellowed ledgers, old photographs, deeds to properties. "These are the archives," Isabella said. "The real archives, not the ones the IRS sees. If there is an answer, it is in here." Serafina's eyes lit up. This was her domain. She walked over her fingers, twitching. "May I?" Isabella stepped back. "Be my guest. Find me a ghost." Serafina spent the next 4 hours doing what she did best. She organized. She categorized. She built a timeline. She ignored the guards playing cards by the door and focused on the paper trail. She found it in a ledger from 1994. It was a shipping manifest for a company called Poseidon Limitata. It was a subsidiary of the Moretti Empire, but the payouts weren't going to Dante's father. They were going to a silent partner. She cross-referenced the dates with a stack of old photographs Isabella had dumped on the table. She found a picture of a young Dante, maybe 10 years old, standing next to his father at a dockyard. Standing behind them, looking younger and thinner, was Stefano Greco. But it was the man next to Greco that caught her eye. He was holding a ledger, the same ledger Serafina was holding now. "Isabella," Serafina called out. "Who is this man?" "The one next to Stefano." Isabella walked over, squinting at the photo. Her face went pale. "That is Marcus, Stefano's younger brother. He disappeared in '95. The rumor was he ran off with a mistress." "He didn't run off," Serafina said, her finger tracing a line in the ledger. "Look at the handwriting. The entries stop on October the 12th, 1995. The very next day, a large sum of money was transferred from the Moretti accounts to a private account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder is listed as SG. "Stefano Greco," Isabella whispered. "And look at the note in the margin." Serafina pointed. "It's in Dante's father's handwriting. Debito pagato. Il problema è risolto. Debt paid. The problem is resolved." Serafina looked up, horror dawning on her. Dante's father didn't just pay Stefano. He paid him to keep quiet about something. And I think Dante's father had Marcus killed. Isabella covered her mouth. "Marcus was the brains. Stefano was always the muscle. If my husband killed Marcus to take full control of the ports, then Stefano isn't trying to take your territory," Serafina finished. "He's trying to exact blood vengeance, an eye for an eye, a brother for a brother, or—" She looked at the most recent entry in a different file, a surveillance report on the Moretti family. "Or a son for a brother," Serafina whispered. "He doesn't want to kill Dante. He wants to destroy him. He wants to take everything he loves and burn it in front of him." "Which is why he targeted me," Isabella said. "And now—" Isabella's eyes widened. She looked at Serafina. "Now you." The realization hit them both at the same time. Crash. The skylight above them shattered. Before the guards could even draw their weapons, canisters dropped from the ceiling, hissing as they hit the floor. Smoke. "Gas!" Isabella screamed. "Serafina, run!" The guards by the door coughed and collapsed, their heavy bodies thudding against the floor. Men in gas masks dropped from the rafters on ropes, hovering with terrifying efficiency. Isabella grabbed a pistol from her purse and fired blindly into the smoke, but a figure emerged from the haze and backhanded her. Isabella fell unconscious. "No!" Serafina screamed. She grabbed a heavy brass lamp and swung it, but a gloved hand caught her wrist mid-air. She was spun around and slammed against a hard chest. A hand clamped over her mouth. "Hello, fiancé," a voice hissed in her ear. It wasn't Stefan. It was younger, smoother. She looked up into the gas mask. The man pulled it off. It was Vinny. Dante's second in command, the man who had been guarding the door at the gala. "You," Serafina choked out. "Stefano pays better." Vinny smiled a cruel, shark-like expression. "And he promised me the Bronx." He pulled a syringe from his pocket. Serafina struggled, kicking and scratching, but he was too strong. He jammed the needle into her neck. The world went sideways, her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Vinny stepping over Isabella's body and the ledger lying open on the table, the truth exposed too late. "Sweet dreams, princess," Vinny whispered. "Dante is going to be so upset when he finds out he missed the party." Darkness took her. Consciousness returned to Serafina like a slow, painful tide. The smell hit her first salt-water rust and rotting fish. She opened her eyes. She was bound to a metal chair in the center of a cavernous, dim space. It was a shipping container, but modified. There was a desk, a rug, and a single hanging bulb that swayed gently, casting long, nauseating shadows. "She wakes," a voice said. Stefano Greco stepped into the light. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo anymore. He was in a leather jacket, looking every bit the thug he was, beneath the veneer of a businessman. Behind him stood Vinny, looking smug. He was tossing Serafina's engagement ring, the cuor di ferro, up and down in his hand. "Where is Isabella?" Serafina croaked. Her throat felt like it was filled with sand. "Alive," Vinny said, catching the ring. "For now. We left her for Dante to find. A breadcrumb trail." "Why?" Serafina asked, looking at Vinny. "He trusted you." "Trust doesn't pay for a penthouse in Monaco," Vinny sneered. "Stefano does." Stefano walked over and placed a hand on the back of Serafina's chair. "Dante is on his way, Cara. He is tearing the city apart. He burned down 3 of my warehouses in the last hour. He is very motivated. He's going to kill you," Serafina said calmly. The fear was there, but it was buried under a cold rage she hadn't known she possessed. "Maybe," Stefano shrugged, "but not before I take what is his. An eye for an eye, a life for a life." "This is about Marcus," Serafina said. Stefano froze. The air in the container went still. Vinny stopped tossing the ring. "What did you say?" Stefano whispered. "Your brother," Serafina said, her mind racing back to the ledger she had decoded. "You think Dante's father had him killed to take the ports. That's why you hate the Morettis." Stefano grabbed her face, his fingers digging into her jaw. "My brother was a good man. Your fiancé's father butchered him like a dog." "You're wrong," Serafina said, staring into his manic eyes. "I saw the ledgers, Stefano, the ones Isabella kept hidden. Marcus wasn't killed for territory. He was skimming." Stefano slapped her. It wasn't hard enough to knock her out, but it stung. "Liar! He was stealing from you," Serafina shouted, tasting blood. "He was funneling money into an account in the Caymans. Dante's father found out. He didn't kill Marcus to take the ports. He killed Marcus because Marcus was about to sell you out to the feds to save his own skin." Stefano stepped back, his face draining of color. "That's impossible." "The ledger had a note," Serafina pressed, desperate to buy time. "Debt paid. The problem is resolved. Dante's father paid Marcus's debts to keep the heat off you. He cleaned up your family's mess." "Shut her up," Vinny yelled, pulling his gun. "She's playing mind games, boss." "Is she?" The voice didn't come from inside the container. It came from the roof. Boom! The metal ceiling of the container exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the small space. Vinny was thrown backward by the concussion blast. Stefano stumbled, covering his eyes. A dark figure dropped through the hole in the ceiling, landing in a crouch. It was Dante. He looked like the Grim Reaper. He was wearing tactical gear, his face smeared with soot, dual pistols raised. Bang, bang, 2 shots. Vinny dropped to the floor, screaming, clutching his kneecaps. He hadn't been killed. He had been neutralized. Dante turned his aim to Stefano, who was scrambling for his weapon on the desk. "Don't!" Dante roared. Stefano froze his hand, inches from his gun. Dante stood up slowly, kicking Vinny's gun away across the floor. He walked toward Serafina, never taking his eyes off Stefano. "Dante," Serafina breathed. With one hand, Dante pulled a knife from his belt and sliced the ropes binding her. As soon as she was free, she threw her arms around him. He held her tight for a split second, a desperate, crushing embrace before pushing her behind him. "You have 3 seconds to explain why I shouldn't paint this wall with your brains." "Stefano," Dante said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "She lies," Stefano spat, pointing a shaking finger at Serafina. "She says Marcus was a traitor." "She's an archivist," Dante said coldly. "She deals in facts. If she says it, it's true." Dante reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He threw it at Stefano's feet. It was the photo Serafina had found, the one of Marcus and the ledger. "My mother told me what you found," Dante said to Serafina, not looking back. "Before the ambulance took her, she told me everything." He looked at Stefano. "My father didn't want you to know your brother was a rat. He thought it would break you. He carried that secret to his grave, out of respect for you." Stefano stared at the photo. He picked it up with trembling hands. He looked at the truth staring him in the face. The brother he had mourned for 30 years, the vengeance that had fueled his life, it was all a lie. Stefano looked at Dante. He looked at Vinny, writhing on the floor. He looked at Serafina, the woman who had unraveled his life with a piece of paper. Stefano laughed. It was a broken, hollow sound. "Well," Stefano said, raising his hands in defeat, "it seems I am the fool." He looked at the gun on the desk. "Don't do it," Dante warned. Stefano grabbed the gun. Dante fired. 1 shot. Center mass. Stefano Greco fell backward, the gun clattering from his hand. He hit the floor and didn't move. Silence descended on the container, broken only by Vinny's whimpering. Dante lowered his weapon. He turned to Serafina. He checked her face, wiping the blood from her lip with his thumb. His hand was shaking. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. The monster was gone. The man was back. "You can't get rid of me that easily," Serafina said, tears finally spilling over. "I still have your ring." She pointed to where Vinny had dropped it. Dante walked over to Vinny. The traitor looked up, eyes wide with terror. "Dante, please," Vinny begged. "It was business. Just business." Dante picked up the cuor di ferro from the floor. He wiped the dust off it on his tactical vest. "You're right, Vinny," Dante said. "It is business." He turned his back on Vinny. Rocco had a family. Send his widow Vinny's share of the profits. Forever. Dante took Serafina's hand and led her out of the container into the cool night air of the docks. Police sirens were wailing in the distance, Isabella's doing, no doubt. "What happens now?" Serafina asked, shivering as the adrenaline crashed. Dante stopped. They were standing on the edge of the pier, the lights of Manhattan glittering across the water. He turned to her and held up the ring. "The contract is fulfilled," Dante said. "Stefano is dead. You are safe. You can go back to your apartment. You can go back to your tea and your dusty papers. No one will bother you. You have the protection of the Moretti family for life." He held the ring out, but he didn't put it on her finger. He gave her a choice. "Or," Serafina asked, "or," Dante said, his voice rough, "you keep the ring, and you stay, not as a fake fiancé, not as a shield, but as my partner, my equal." He looked at her with a vulnerability that broke her heart. "I cannot promise you a safe life, Serafina, but I can promise you that you will never be alone again, and I will love you until the last star burns out." Serafina looked at the city skyline. She thought about her quiet, invisible life. Then she looked at the man standing in front of her, the man who had walked through fire to find her, the man who made her feel more alive in 3 days than she had felt in 26 years. She took the ring from his hand. "I never liked being safe anyway," she said. She slid the heavy diamond onto her finger herself. Dante smiled. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her deep and passionate as the sirens drew closer. "Let's go home, Mrs. Moretti," he whispered against her lips. "It's Ms. Calloway," she corrected, smiling. "For now." "We'll see about that," Dante said. He lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the waiting car, leaving the darkness behind them, ready to rule the city together. And that is how a cup of tea at the plaza turned into a war for the soul of New York City. Serafina went from preserving history to making it, proving that sometimes the quietest people have the loudest hearts and the sharpest instincts. She didn't just survive the Mafia. She tamed it. If you were Serafina, would you have taken the ring at the end? Or would you have run back to the safety of the museum? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more romance danger and twists you won't see coming, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.